Hey everyone, today on Up Next in Commerce, we got to chat with Kornit Digital's Chief Marketing Officer, Omer Kulka. We got to dive into a lot of really interesting topics in the world of fashion, including how they pivoted their business by disrupting themselves, which we hear all the time, but it's really cool to get into the details. Most companies are trying to become tech companies right now. Kornit's leading into the fashion industry, even having fashion shows. Awesome. We also chatted about how the supply and demand model has completely changed and completely gone upside down at this point. Before, you were creating things and then trying to make the demand. Now you've got the demand and then you can create the supply right like that. Also, did you know that 33% of inventory is overproduced? It's never used. So of course, we got to dive into the world of sustainability and where that's at and where it's headed. Enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome back to Up Next in Commerce. I'm your host, Stephanie Postles, CEO at mission.org. Today on the show, we have Omer Kulka, who serves as the CMO at Kornit Digital. Omer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on. We have been having a lot of fashion companies on over the past 6 months. So I think this will be a really nice conversation to kind of hear where the industry is headed, what's going on. Maybe that's a great place to start. Tell me a bit about Kornit Digital. Who are you guys and what do you do?
Okay, so at Kornit, what we do is we're developers of technology. We started with developing technology for digital printing on textile. That was always our forte. However, we're actually expanding our offering to just enable on-demand sustainable fashion production. So if you look at our vision right now is really to shift the fashion industry to sustainable on-demand manufacturing. And we are working diligently on developing more and more solutions to actually enable that. So if we started from the world of hardware, software, and consumables, a lot of chemistry and printing and in finishing of textiles in general, now we're actually expanding more into areas that were not originally in our product offering. A lot of them, for example, are software related more than anything else, really allowing to connect demand and supply in the new world of fashion, consumers and manufacturing.
Well, so when was this shift made into like focusing on fashion?
So I think it's a transition, so it takes you a while. So I think that a few years back, if we saw 10 years ago, I would say, if you look at who were our biggest customers, they were very big customers, very successful in niche kind of segments of fashion. And most of them were not really in fashion, but more apparel. And most of them actually were built on unique business models. So a lot of e-com companies, or a lot of apparel companies that went e-com, and the business model was what was driving the need to do things differently and to use our technology. So it means that if you wanted personalized garments, for example, so you wanted to upload an image of some sort, and then you wanted that cannot be made anyway in a traditional way of making apparel. So this is where kind of our technology was really the best at. In the last few years, what we've seen is that there's a huge shift in the retail model of apparel fashion specifically. And that shift has created a demand for on-demand manufacturing and on-demand supply from a completely different place, not really from the design side of things. As I said before, if you want something unique, a one-off, it has to be digitally made for you. So it wasn't from the design side, it wasn't from the business model side. It was mainly from the need to reduce the risks of inventory, to know how to actually monetize on trends. And then we saw that need for on-demand manufacturing shifting from those unique, I would say, on-demand e-com niches to actually kind of like the mainstream fashion brands and retailers. So that I would say started about 3 to 4 years ago. Apparently, when COVID came, things accelerated very, very heavily in the same segments and in other segments as well that saw that this is an immediate thing. So I think that this is a shift that we started making in about 2017 is where we really started making that shift. But I think that at the second half of last year is where we really said, we really need to change the way we do things, the way we think, and our position in the market. So if before COVID, it was all about shifting a segment of the industry into on-demand, and if we thought that our role was let's position ourselves in the best way to enjoy the trends that we actually identify in the market. I think that at the second half of 2020, we actually identified that that the market is changing and shifting so fast that we need to actually have a different role in it. So instead of just positioning ourselves in the best way possible to enjoy the trend, I would say, we understood that it's not only an opportunity for us, but also, I would say, an imperative for us to actually help the industry as a whole to transition.
Yeah.
And this is where we started really shift and to change our role in the industry, I would say, and really instead of being a technology company from the outside that solves one little problem that it may be very painful, but is one problem, to really understanding the workings of the entire ecosystem of the industry, and really to understand how we can enable a transition that is an industry-wide transition that is so necessary.
Yeah. I mean, what's so amazing about your guys' company is, I mean, you are not a small company. I think you have, over 500 employees at this point, or maybe even
over 800.
800. Okay. Over 800 employees, thinking about this big, massive company that had always been doing kind of one thing, and then completely disrupting yourself and saying, not only am I just a tech company now, like we are part of the fashion industry, and making yourselves a leader in that industry and being seen as that now. Like, what has it been like taking your entire org and kind of shifting the mindset around like who we are and what is the culture about and what are our goals? Because to me, they're so different than what they were maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I don't think it has been. It still is. It's a major transition. I think that again, in some ways, it was very, very difficult. It still is. In some ways, it's not as difficult for us. In a sense, we're disruptors. But we're from a technology perspective, it's true. And sometimes as a developer and R&D and technology, you look at things really kind of like narrow and you try to solve problems one at a time. So when COVID hit and everybody was kind of like taken aback, and it's like, okay, what's happening here? And we're sitting, and it was like, we were devising like plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they became irrelevant even faster than they were. Yeah. We were actually managing to define them. It was a scary moment there, but then we said, you know what? Hey, let's breathe deep for a second. We're disruptors. We feel comfortable in this environment. This is an environment of disruption, and we're happy in it. So we're good. So I think that need for a change and that capability to change was in our DNA, to begin with. Even from the numbers, we've been growing the last 8 or 9 years for about 24% CAGR top line. That means that we double our revenue every 3 years.
Yeah.
We're a different animal every 3 years. And I always say, when we're a different animal every 3 years, you need to actually reinvent yourself every 2 years. And you need to think about it every year. So it's what we do all the time. But yes, the change that we started last year is a much bigger change than it was before, and we're a lot bigger now than we were. So yes, it is a lot more challenging, but it's a lot more exciting in that as well. And I think that the excitement and the belief in the vision that we have, I think this is what makes the transition possible in a company like ours. I think that, it's like, we believe in it. We truly do. And it's not only the management team, it's a vision that we live by, and we actually do things to make it happen. I think that that is really the force, behind it. You have, there's this phrase I'll probably get it wrong, but it's like, culture eats strategy for breakfast or something like that. And it's true. Yeah. So we have the strategy, and it takes courage to change your strategy and take a full company going in a different direction, but it's about the culture behind it. If you don't have it, it doesn't work. And I think that it's it's about the values behind it. I mean, we really believe that we're making an impact for the better. We really believe that we're making things better. And I think this is what driving people and allows us to drive this change.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool. So when thinking about like the supply and demand model, I want to kind of highlight, the problems and what the industry has looked like up until now. I know you've in the past mentioned that it used to be you would have inventory, you would have supply, and you'd have to spark up demand. And there'd be really long lead times, maybe of like when a customer would actually get something from when they would maybe see it on the runway. So I want to, highlight a bit more of like what did the industry look like and where is it headed now with you guys? Like what will the world look like right now?
Yeah. So I would say the classic model of fashion is basically supply and demand. So what you do is you design something and then you make it. But it takes a very, very, very long time till it hits the street and the stores. And there's no way that I will be able to know what you want to buy a year from now. Now, just so you'll understand, I mean, average time is a year, 6 to 18 months. It really depends on who you are. Of course, fast fashion is faster, but as a general flow of things, it's 6, 9, 12 months. So I actually designed something, but you will be able to buy it in a year's time. Now, there's no way I will know what you are going to buy. So the only way for me to make that model work is to create the demand when my items actually are getting closer to the store. Mm-hmm. And that was how it was that was how it worked, basically. It still does, by the way, in most areas of the business right now. So what happens is that suddenly flowers, purple flowers, for example, is the hit of the season, right? So I make the trend. It's like I do marketing and all the, and you see it in all the magazines and the celebrities and the models and everything. And it looks really, really hot and hip and now, but actually those purple flowers were designed a year ago. But I make the trend now and then everybody buys it. Now, what happened in the last few years is that people started buying online. And when you buy online, your purchasing decisions are, you behave completely differently. And your purchasing decisions are being affected by completely different things than, when you go to a brick and mortar store or when you flip a magazine. So, for example, about 74% of purchasing decisions online are influenced by social media. So suddenly social media is actually calling the shots and what the trends are. And what happened in the last few years is that the trend setting actually shifted away from the brands and the retailers to, I would say, I call it the power to the people. It's like more fashionistas, bloggers. And if, 2 or 3 years ago, it was still, manageable because it was like the really huge mega influencers that were, making the trends. It's not the case anymore. It's really kind of like it's out there. And what happens when you don't control the trend anymore, then suddenly it doesn't work. I really don't know what you're going to buy. And if we see what happened in the last, in the last few years, trends are getting a lot shorter, and the number of adopters is getting smaller as well.
Yep, it's like micro trends popping up.
Exactly, and they pop up and they disappear, and geographically they're completely dispersed. Although, if, for example, sometimes if you look at the digital sphere, they're very closely located, because if you and I watch the same, follow the same trend, then hey, we both want it.
Yeah, we're watching the same TikTok videos, even though you're in Tel Aviv and I'm in Austin.
And I'm in Tel Aviv, you're in Austin. Yeah. And if I'm a brand and I want to monetize on that, because we're going to move on in a week's time, then we have to make sure that you get in Austin, I get in Tel Aviv in the next, in the time frame that we have to do that. That is impossible for the existing model to actually operate. In order actually to overcome that, there is about 30% of overproduction that is embedded within the model, right? Mm-hmm. So companies right now actually overproduce about 30% just in order to make sure that they don't miss out too much, that they don't run out on bestsellers, and that they don't get stuck with too many inventory items everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now, that 30% is a killer. economically, and it's a killer environmentally. And this is the key. And I think this is where most of the problem lies right now. And I think this is where the change is really required. So if I said before that, in the past, the people that went to on-demand were really driven by a different business model, a unique design that is required. Right now, it's more about the fact that the business model right now is not sustainable. Okay, just to give you a very simple example, this shirt right now, a cotton t-shirt, in order to make this shirt, you need to use about 2.5 tons of water.
Wow. It's a lot of water, especially if you have 33% more than you actually need.
So every shirt that was made just in order to try and balance things out is 30%. This 30% overproduction just creates this huge pollution. So I use all these resources to get things into the market that nobody needs. It fuels and it fuels that cycle of overproduction, over demand. And just the cost is just humongous, not only from economically as well, right? People get stuck with unsold inventories, which is what actually created the not less than a collapse, I would say, of the retail model and the retailers in the last 3 years or so. So it's unsold inventory, and it's excess production is really killing our planet as well. So this is where the major problem lies. Now, if we look at how can we do things differently, this is where the on-demand comes into play. What we're advocating for on-demand sustainable manufacturing, which means that instead of supply and demand, you actually shift the model to demand and supply. So what you do is you actually, instead of trying to sell what you already manufactured, you're actually manufacturing what you already sold.
Yep.
Now that works when you completely change the production model behind it. Because right now, the way things are produced, they're produced in hubs, in places very, very far away. By the way, the reason why they are there are not very good reasons in the past.
Is it just because of cost maybe? Like I'm in Austin, but I'm going to outsource to China, and then the order's going to come in, it'll be in China, it'll maybe end up in, I don't know, Florida, and maybe get back to Austin eventually.
Exactly. Mainly two reasons, cost of labor. And in the past, now it's running out of steam, that working assumption. It was also because of sustainability standards and regulations. It was easier to do it there because it's very polluting, and nobody can pollute. In California, nobody's going to allow you to, to pollute any water, so you can't do it there.
Wow.
So it was pushed to the farther corners of the earth in order, it's going to be manufactured there and shipped here. What we're doing right now is we're advocating something completely different. Instead of manufacturing where it's easier or cheaper to manufacture, instead of kind of like creating a supply chain, let's create an on-demand supply matrix. So let's produce where the consumers are. And we all think that this is impossible because consumers are everywhere. It's true, but in about 20 cities around the globe, you actually cover about 80% of the demand. And what we're advocating for is actually shifting forward the production, creating obviously sustainable production mechanisms, because it has to be. And instead of having these huge hubs of overproduction and then shipping it over and trying to sell it, we actually create a matrix of sustainable on-demand production close to the consumers. So when you actually go online and choose something, you instigate an order that will be manufactured and produced for you specifically, and will be shipped to you.
And is Kornit the one that's having all these hubs? Or, I mean, it seems like also like a brand can come in and buy one of your guys' big printers, I guess, if they can afford it. Or maybe there's hubs set up too, or how does it actually work?
So in the past, and this is a part of our transition as well. So in the past, for us, it was all about selling our technology and our equipment, because this is what, this is how we made money. Yep. We developed technology and then we sold it, and then that's how we made, that was our business model. But right now, as I said, we're really trying to make that more of a viable solution for many other people. And that change, actually, we actually created a unique, a completely different business offering and product offering. And what we're trying to establish right now is we're establishing a global fulfillment network of our customers. So we're actually creating an overlay of a network that connects demand and supply. We have our own customers, and we actually create the demand, and we pull this demand and we route it smartly. We have smart routing, again, based on who you are as a consumer and where it's best to be produced. And this is what we're doing right now. So in a sense, we're kind of moving the model from fast fashion to fast fashion, I call it, fashion as a service. So, and I think that is a very appealing model also for brands. So most brands are not vertical, and as much as the concept and the model is actually very alluring to them, they will not start investing in production mechanisms, and it's not what they do. They know how to design, they know how to market, they know how to sell. So we're actually creating an infrastructure of a global fulfillment network that will be able to provide that as a service. Again, that also means that you actually lower the entry barrier for designers.
Yeah, so like anyone can now enter the game and be able to print out a few things and not have to actually own a big piece of tech that maybe, they'd have to be fully into a business to even be able to afford that back in the day.
Exactly. Because, right now, if you want to produce your own line of clothes, you have to actually create everything and then try to sell it. So you have to put a lot of risk in the game. And if you're not really sure of it, you can lose everything. And right now, what you do is it's actually risk-free. So all that you need to have is your inspiration and your creativity, and then you can start rolling your own business. In a sense, and I think this is something, this is a parallel that I really like, actually. We talked about the problem that the retail model is in apparel and fashion is facing in the last few years. So a very interesting statistic is in the last few years, the speed in which we saw apparel items moving from brick and mortar to online is only paralleled by two similar phenomena that we've seen in the past. So one was in the mid-90s with Amazon and books, and the other one was in the mid-2000s with music and iTunes. And I think that music and iTunes is probably a very, very good parallel, because what happens with music and iTunes, it created a full digital transformation of the music industry. And not only did it change the business model, right? So, think about recording companies. It completely changed their business model. So, it was like a full album based on 2 hits. Then it was just every song was 99 cents. And now it's streaming. So it's a completely different shift. But to connect to what we just talked about, it's not only about that. It completely democratized music, because it completely changed the rules of what is a hit, who decides what is a hit, who is going to be a published artist. It's not someone in an office somewhere that decides that, no, I can decide it for myself. If I think that I can be a published artist, I publish. And if the public likes it, then it's out there and it's great. So I think that this is the shift that we're going to see in the fashion industry as well, which is going to completely change, I would say, the landscape of fashion. I think the players, who's going to be a player in the fashion industry, and what is going to be the definition of that.
Yeah, which is, super exciting when you think about all the boutiques and stuff who have really amazing, fashion and trends there that you wouldn't find anywhere else. They have that everywhere here in Austin, where you walk into stores and you're like, wow, how do more people not know about you? Definitely is giving an opportunity to a lot of people. What are some of the trends? I'm sure you guys see a ton of stuff behind the scenes of people, coming online and selling their things. Like, what are some maybe newer trends that you're seeing pop up over the last 6 months with some brands or creators? I know you also work with Amazon and they're an investor in you guys. Like, tell me a bit about what you see changing right now that's a bit of a surprise to you maybe, or just exciting to watch.
So for me, I always like the places where things kind of like mesh up in a sense. It's like, well, in our industry is always no pun intended, but it's like in the seams, right? It's where the most interesting things I think take shape and happen. And I think that probably one of the most interesting trends that I see right now is that mesh up between physical and virtual, and to see where virtual fashion is going and how it is going to connect to the physical world. I have to say it was something that was a little difficult for me to grasp at the beginning. It's like at first it was like, okay, what's going on? What does it mean that's a virtual fashion? So, everybody's talking about virtual and digital and many times this means that I bought something online, but I don't mean about that. I don't mean that. I mean that virtual fashion is actually fashion that doesn't really exist in real life. And we're starting to see these collaboration between design houses and gaming developers. So you start to see fashion in games, in video games, computer games. And it's a very interesting concept. So again, at first I was like, I'm not sure where, how, why, but it took me, but then it clicked, and I really understand it. And when I think about on-demand sustainable manufacturing, it's on-demand sustainable manufacturing. This is on-demand sustainable fashion.
Because you never get it. There's nothing there.
It is there. It's fine,
I mean, I guess I'll look at, but I mean,
think about the following application. So a lot of us are remote anyway, and we all like to post pictures of ourselves. And let's say you wanna post a beautiful picture of yourself wearing this most amazing dress.
Okay,
do you really need that dress?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Okay, I kind of actually see that now, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I just want to look good in this picture," and it is a very heavy Instagram world right now.
Specifically for you, and it's going to be an amazing looking dress, and you're going to look amazing in the picture, and that's it. And it's a completely virtual world. You're real, you're physical. The dress is physical, is virtual. So I think this is a very, very interesting place, which is going to be very interesting for me to see where it goes. Because I think, again, when we think ourselves, we always think about retail as omni-channel, but it's not about retail. It's about us. We're omni-channel right now, right?
Yeah.
So we're speaking right now. You don't know if I have legs, for example. I do.
Thank you for clarifying. I was wondering this whole time.
Yeah. So, but it's completely virtual, So there is a layer there. And if you think about fashion, not as what it is in the physical term of things, but what is the function that it plays in our life? What is the role that it plays? And it's about self-expression and self-identity. Then virtual fashion can do that for you in the virtual world, where a lot of our existence is actually taking place. So very interesting. For me, that's probably one of the most interesting trends that I see right now. And it can take, different shapes and different ways. There are other trends, of course, just seeing, in a sense, the forced marriage, I would say, brands and marketplaces. They were never good friends. Now they have to be good friends. So I think there are a lot of things are changing. And I think that they're changing for the better, because I think that they change for different reasons that will have to make people work better and do things better. I think that sustainability and the need for transparency, this was a big shift that took place during COVID. So suddenly everybody is like, okay, there's a crisis here and I want to know what's behind it. And I think that the demand of consumers right now for transparency and traceability of what they wear is probably, again, one of the most important things out there as well. And it's that combination between sustainability and the fashion that I'm wearing. And I think that is also a huge trend that will probably change the industry very, very dramatically. Again, a parallel that is interesting to me in that sense is probably food industry about 20 years ago. That suddenly people wanted to know what's in it, and they started to look at the ingredients and what happened to the ingredients, how, from the back end of whatever it was in very, very small font, it became, at the front, large fonts, And I don't know, think about what you can buy in McDonald's right now. So it's fast fashion, but it's not it's fast fashion. Fast fashion, fast food, by the way, actually has some parallels to that.
Very similar.
Yeah. So fast food, but not necessarily junk food. You can get salad. So I think that that shift again. I think it's going to change the industry as well. So I think yes, there are some very interesting trends that we see right now. They're definitely going to change fashion, and fashion is not an industry that is just out there. It's something that touches everybody.
Yeah. What's exciting about the time that we're in now too is that you can actually see all the data into the supply chain. I mean, we had on an executive from Avery Dennison a couple episodes back, and he was talking about how, they can add a digital ID to every part of, the entire supply chain down to, the smallest piece of that item. And people actually want that now. They want to understand, like, hey, what's happening to my Adidas shoes after the fact? Where is it going? Is it actually getting reused? Is it in a new pair of shoes? And being able to actually show that from a data perspective seems like now we have access to things that we just didn't have, a decade ago. And so it's even kind of improving people's excitement towards, now they can see it and they want to see more of it and know, what's happening with their items, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that obviously opens up the whole concept of circular economy, which is also, I think, a big thing that fashion will have to start playing in, because a lot of the stuff that we wear is very short-lived and that's it. And then it's gone. And I think that we have to rethink how we do that as well. So again, this infrastructure of technologies that allow us to monitor, to identify, to get the data is crucial to actually make that work as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. So the other thing I want to touch on was we talked a bit earlier about you guys shifting, to become part of the fashion industry. And I want to hear more about like how you guys did that. Earlier, before we were recording, you were talking about fashion shows and being a part of that. And I just wanted you to touch a bit on that because I thought it was very interesting seeing how you guys are playing in the industry now and becoming like a leader and actually having events. So if you could talk a bit more about that, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I would gladly talk about it because it's a super exciting transition that we're taking right now. So yeah, it started actually at the beginning of this year when we actually joined forces with the producer of the Tel Aviv Fashion Week, and it was a very interesting conversation at first. So at first, actually, we came at it from a completely technological perspective when we said, listen, we have some very, very new exciting products that came out this year. And these products that can actually produce a lot of different applications that were not out there before. And we're kind of like, thinking it's like, okay, what can we do with it? And we said, let's start joining forces with designers. They'll know what to do with it. We'll just create the tools and they'll play with it. So, okay, let's try and do that. And one thing led to another. And we said, okay, we need to have more designers, around us. And we started getting closer to the designer community, but again, from that perspective of let's get our technology really enable creativity more than anything else. But then we had the conversation about Tel Aviv Fashion Week, and Moti Raif, who is the producer of Tel Aviv Fashion Week, he's a known fashion persona here in Israel. And when I first met him, he told me something that was really, and this is when it clicked. He told me, listen, I've been in fashion for 30 years, but fashion is not about nice clothes. It's not about that at all. It's about a platform that reaches each and one of us in very, very intimate places. And this is why it's a platform that can really convey a message. And through that, this is where we clicked. And we understood that there is a platform here that we can actually convey a message and we can actually communicate values that are important to us that we think are important to other people as well. Now, Tel Aviv Fashion Week is actually the first place where they started breaking the concept of the model of beauty. Mm-hmm. So there are models of different genders, ages, sizes, and it has been that way for the past 5 or 7 years already. So this one we said, okay, listen, let's do it together. Let's make this year's Tel Aviv Fashion Week all about sustainability from the social side of things, but also from the environmental side of things. And that's when we started to do it. And we created full collections for the fashion show in something like 2 to 3 weeks, which usually takes about 5 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And that was possible, again, because of the unique capability that our technology enables to produce fashion, really on-demand, sustainable. So you can do it close. You don't need all any other processes outside of it. So it's completely standalone, and you can do it. And it started there, which was a big success, and it was a huge transition for us. Think about it. I mean, we develop systems. We actually make ink. We have an ink plant. Mm-hmm. And suddenly we're on the runway. It was a mind-blowing transition to all of us.
I mean, to think about, usually you would see like people on a runway and you'd be like, oh wow, when can I actually buy that? And it's like a year later and I'm like, oh, am I still even interested in that? I remember that from a long time ago, and now it's just starting to come to market. The only person who was wearing it was a Kardashian because they knew the designer. So it's such a change of mindset now.
Exactly. And what happened there is we said, okay, what we take the long cycle and we shorten it. Not only the production to the show, but from show to store is going to take you days. Mm-hmm. So instead of a year, you see it on the runway, you can buy it next day. Yep. Online, on demand, you can buy it. It will be made especially for you and sent over. And that is the concept behind it. We joined forces with a design group called 3S4 in the New York Fashion Week that took place about 3 weeks ago. So that, again, they are very, very creative, and for them, it's all about kind of like stretching the technology to the limits and see how fashion and technology can meet in very unique and inspiring places. And there as well. So there was a full collection on the runway made in a matter of weeks, and then on that we build a unique collection that is going to be available on demand only. So you see it on the runway, we translate it to on-demand collection you can buy online, and that's it. So that was like the second step, and the next one is that we have a huge event that we are actually having in LA in the first week of November. It's going to be the Kornit Fashion Week. We're going to debut that in LA. The concept behind it is to create an alternative fashion week that is going to be based on values of sustainability, from the social side of things and from the environmental side of things. So things are going to be made sustainably from the environmental side of things. They're going to be made locally, and they're going to be available from runway to commercialized goods that can be sold, again, in a matter of days, instead of you see it on the runway and then you meet it at the store in the next year. So it's going to be a big debut. It's going to be the first week of November in LA, and it's going to be an amazing event. And again, the idea behind it is how we can really create an impact that is much larger than ourselves and can really help an entire industry really transition in the place where it needs to go and needs to be. Cool. So yeah, a very exciting transition, and it's going to be an awesome event.
So that's amazing. I want to hear a little bit too around, I mean, there's, a big movement around exclusivity. You see that with like scarcity and NFTs popping up, being really big. And I want to hear like how you guys are, thinking about that around this industry where now, you're able to print things quickly, have them when you want. Like, it seems like now anyone can kind of access this technology, any brand, and it actually kind of takes away from that exclusivity and the scarcity method that many have relied on. So how are you kind of viewing this trend right now that maybe isn't totally associated with fashion, but I feel like you guys are looking outside your industry for other trends, so maybe you're thinking about it.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I would like to kind of differentiate between scarcity and exclusivity, because it's not really the same thing. Well, there is a derivative there, but well, first of all, what we believe in, it's a big difference between physical and virtual here. So we believe in infinite virtual possibilities, but physically, we make only what we desire. We don't make anything else. And I think that this is where the exclusivity comes from. So it's about, think about it, you just look at infinite possibilities, but they're just out there in the virtual world. They're not physically available in other places. It actually creates more exclusivity than what you think. Mm-hmm. So first of all, it actually enables complete exclusivity because you can actually customize or personalize whatever you want. Okay, so co-creation, the entire concept of co-creation, that me as an end consumer can co-create my my unique apparel is something that is embedded within this model, actually. So most of our customers do personalization and customization. Mm-hmm. So that actually allows for hyper exclusivity. You can make your own thing, and it will be made for you. But I think that it actually opens up a place for more exclusivity as well, because when we buy at the same store and there are only 10 items there, the chances of us actually getting the same item are pretty high. Mm-hmm. You know, you go to a store, like a high street store, and then, you know, it's trendy and you buy the trendy stuff, and then we end up at the party wearing the same thing. Yeah. If I actually choose from an infinite, you know, theoretically an infinite menu of virtual items, those chances are getting very, very slim.
Got it. Okay. So instead of being at like an H&M where you're looking at something, there's only 5 left, but you're like, well, there's all these H&Ms around. Other people are definitely buying this t-shirt. You're saying now there's just way more items that you can still have a small amount of quantity. So then everyone is actually wearing their own thing, and you're never going to run into someone with the same t-shirt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, you can always run the exclusivity as you want. So you can always create a limited edition. The fact that I can actually manufacture it again doesn't mean that I have to. Mm-hmm. So think about it. It's always one by one. It's when you want it, somebody will produce it for you. When I want it, somebody will produce it for me. Mm-hmm. So it can actually, again, it doesn't conflict in any way. It actually gives you more, in a sense, it actually gives you more opportunities for exclusivity and creating unique and different collections.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. You're able to kind of control what you want to do with it and lean into that trend or not if you don't want to. That's great. Exactly. All right. So the last piece I want to hear is kind of like, what are you most excited about around Kornit Digital? Like, where are you guys heading over the next 1 to 3 years that, you're excited to see come true?
So it's definitely that transition that we're talking about. So we're completely changing who we are as a company. So I think that the DNA of us as inventors and disruptors is the same, but the scale and the places that we're taking it are completely different than before. And that is super exciting, because at the end, I think that for me, it's all about just how much impact you can make and how far you can reach with your impact. And I think that what we see right now is our impact is becoming more evident and clearer to a lot more people. And I think that we can actually manage to touch more and more people and affect more people's lives. Again, it's all about the core values. And I think that I truly believe that we're transitioning an industry to a better place, and to see that taking shape and to see that, real categories of everyday life that people like us are actually enjoying and using are changing for the better. That for me is the most exciting thing. And it's a journey. It's not an easy task. And again, it's always easier said than done, to like, even with the technology and the capabilities and everything is out there, it's not that fast that entire industry is moving in a different place and a different direction. But I think that for me, that's the most exciting, because I actually see it right now. And it's been a long journey. And we said, it's been years that, for years we actually advocated for that change. But seeing right now the acceleration and how things are shifting, for me, super exciting. And it's funny, I had this conversation a few weeks ago with one of our board members, actually, and he asked me, listen, Omer, do you really think that you guys can actually change the supply chain? Do you think that the supply chain of this entire industry is going to change? And I told him, yes, absolutely. Why not? And I told him a story about a conversation I had with a gentleman that was the COO of one of the biggest kind of like house of brands in the fashion industry, a multi-billion-dollar company. And he told me about a story about his biggest project when he joined the company. And that big project was in the 90s. And that project was to shift production from the US to China. Mm-hmm. And he told me, listen, it was a nightmare. There was nothing there. There was nowhere to produce, no skilled labor. There were no raw materials. There was nothing there. We couldn't do anything. And that was in the 90s. So yes, it's a long time ago, but not that long time ago. And I was like, if in the 90s, when somebody tried to manufacture fashion in China, it was like a nightmare for them because there was nothing there, then hell yes, we can change, the industry and the supply chain, because things are moving a lot faster these days than
they can do that. You all can do anything.
In the 90s. Yeah. So if back then they can actually shift, and right now for us, everything is made in China. So it's clear that it was always there and always has been, but it's not.
Yep.
So yes, I definitely think that in 5, 10, 15 years from now, if you look a little further, not 2, 3 years, 2, 3 years, you can shift things around, but not an entire industry. But yes, I definitely think that 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to see a completely different model of manufacturing, how fashion is made and how fashion is serving us as end consumers, and how it serves us as citizens of the planet differently. And for me, that's the most exciting thing about it, is that really be a part of something that is a lot bigger than us and making a change for the better.
Yeah, well, I love that. That's a perfect spot to wrap it up. Omer, thank you so much for hopping on here and hanging out. Hopefully I'll see you at the fashion show in LA, but if not, where can people find out more about you and Kornit Digital?
Look us up on the internet. Kornit Fashion Week is where you will find our platform, our new alternative platform for fashion weeks that starts in LA. That's it.
That sounds good. Thanks so much, Omer.
Thank you, Stephanie.